Welcome to the Covering Data podcast, covering guests from the data, development, and IT world. Hi, welcome to Covering Data Consulting podcast. This is Eric Strom with Covering Data, and this is podcast number 7 with Jonn Berg with Tech Rescue. Welcome, John. Thanks for coming on.
Hi. Yeah, it'll be fun, I think.
You want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jonn Berg, and I fill a number of roles in life. One of them is I'm a systems engineer with the state of Minnesota, and that's actually how I met Eric, almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, something like that. And then my other role is I run and manage Tech Rescue. It's a consulting company in the Twin Cities that kind of does everything technology related, I guess.
People speaking for sure.
yeah. So, if you think of the Geek Squad, we do it better generally. But also some of the other bigger names like that do things, other small business and network related stuff too, and emergency calls. At 2 a.m, my hard drive is down. What do I do? We've had those calls plenty of times.
And
then I'm
like
also
server setups, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Server setups, and actually rescuing servers that have crashed,
Right.
as best we can. We can't always guarantee to get everything, but oftentimes we do. And then my other roles are husband and father. I've got Becca and my wife and 3 kids. So hopefully one or more of the children will join Tech Rescue in the future too.
Well, that would be pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Well, and you also take care of a few animals too, don't you?
Oh yeah, my wife's a horse lady. She likes. We've got 2 big horses, a pony. Right now, every winter, we're also kind of take on a smaller pony for one of my wife's cousins. And then in the spring, we give him back. Dog, cat, chickens. Yeah, it's never a dull moment in our neck of the woods.
No doubt. Well, aside from meeting you at the state of Minnesota back, however long it was now.
Yeah.
Talk about your history. How'd you get started in IT?
Sure. I guess it kind of started when my dad got transferred. He was a state trooper, and he got transferred out of the city up to a small town called Park Rapids. And because I wasn't born there, and because my dad was a cop, there was some friction, and he's a nice way to say it, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of friends for a while up there. The few friends I did have were generally into technology at the time, the Apple IIs and the 2GSs, and there was an IBM PC, I think that was like a 286 running. And so we used to just spend all of our life in the computer lab before school, at lunch, and after school until I played hockey too. So that was my one saving grace, I guess. There is so I wasn't a total nerd, but I was definitely on the nerd spectrum there.
Right.
Yeah. So we did things like logo on the Apple IIs. We'd mess around with logo and try to break things, and general, little boy stuff like drawing pictures that wouldn't necessarily be the picture that the teacher wants to see, and stuff like that. So peek and poke, if you remember those commands. I'm not really a programmer anymore, so
Right.
But yeah.
I kind of remember those days of like I think for me it was like 4th grade where we started doing the Apple II something or other. It might have been the 2G or GS or something like that, and used the little turtle to draw things, and it was a lot of fun. But that wasn't quite when I really got the bug. But
Okay.
Yeah. When did you start getting your fingers into the guts of computers? Just out of curiosity.
ninth grade is when we really got our first computer as a family. My dad uh, was really kind of pushing against a computer for a while. He had a typewriter and he figured that was all we needed, and I used that a lot. The old brother typewriters.
Hmm.
And then that's what he would do all of his paperwork on if he wasn't at the law enforcement center. He'd come home and he'd do paperwork in the evening a lot of times. Um, but my mom was an educator and was going back to school, or wanted to go back to school to get her master's eventually in media specialty. So she knew that computers were worthwhile and were probably going to be a big deal. Um, and so she was really kind of the impetus of getting my father to say, okay, fine, we'll get a 286 IBM compatible. And it was a Laser Pal, if you remember those. Uh, we bought one of those, and it was very expensive, but um, I started dinking around with it and broke it. And my dad said, figure out how to fix it. You broke it. And that's kind of where it started. Um,
Wow.
my dad eventually surpassed me in ability for a while there. And it wasn't until I went to college my first year in 94, 95, that I really kind of started to surpass his ability and knowledge, because I was able to spend a lot of time in the computer labs at college. And there was a lot more people that knew more than I did. And there still are. So,
Right, that's how you do it,
yep, yep. And so that was kind of the beginning, early 90s. And it just kind of continued from there. I went to college, stayed in college longer than I wanted to,
Hmm.
and got an internship down in Roseville here in the Twin Cities, and moved down here as soon as I could. Um, got a job or continued the internship into a full-time job. Got laid off the day after September 11th,
Oh,
2001, and moved into another position in the same company, kind of not official, but semi-official, and was in the process of getting it turned into a full-time position when I got laid off again. And
mm.
then I got another job with my old roommate from college, where he worked, and I was there for about 3 months and got laid off there again. So I
Yeah,
thought,
that was a
well,
tough time.
three strikes and in early 2000s, and might as well see what I can do on my own. So I started Tech Rescue, and another friend of ours, Bob, joined me about 6 months after I started it, and he was with me for a long time, and till he took a job with another company as a part-time thing that turned into a full-time. So,
Actually, that's funny because there's another individual I was talking with, the CEO of a place called Immersion Software, and he was working. That was when we were talking about it, I was kind of thinking about that was a really tough time. Like I think he was at
yep,
telco and they imploded too because right. I
yep,
mean all the places with websites. I mean that needed the bandwidth. Everybody was affected, right? And
yep.
I I got super lucky. I was so fortunate because I was with
You're still in college.
well yeah,
Kind of.
I was in college, but I also was with a company that who all their customers were energy, and
Oh,
so they
yep,
they were energy wasn't affected like
yep.
everybody else was. So I mean it was total luck because I remember looking at the job postings and like wanting to be a DBA needed like a PhD. It's like I
Yeah.
mean it's like they had to find some way to filter out the resumes because there's so many tech people at work. So
Oh yeah, there was hundreds, and even when we started Tech Rescue, and we had a couple of advertisements, radio ads and stuff, and we would get cold called from just people looking, hey, are you hiring by any chance? And Bob and I would look at each other and kind of smile and go, I wish, but sorry.
right. Yeah, we're
So
figuring this out too,
yep,
you
yep.
know.
So
Well, You've been doing tech rescue for how many years now?
Uh, well, it was April 2nd, 2002 was the official start date, or 2001. Yeah, April 2nd, 2001 was the official start date.
Hmm.
Um, but then when I got laid off was in September and December and January again. And so then I kind of went full time because I had been getting a few people in the other job that were asking, "Hey, can you come over to my house after work and fix my computer?" So I said, "Well, sure." And I started kind of doing that on the side, and was like, "Well, I should probably start a company to at least just do this." Um, and so that's how it officially started. But then it kind of petered down a little bit uh, as it wasn't growing as fast as I thought it was going to, and I still had a full time job. And so then
Hmm.
April 1st, 2002 is when I was officially my first day of no more job. Um, and so then that's kind of when I was like, this is full time, all or nothing, and so then I did that full time starting then.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of cool too that the way you do it right now with as a side business, because it's I mean there's never a lack of small business and or consumer
Mhm.
folks that need help with this kind of stuff. And you know, I mean, heck, like I pride myself in being a specialist, right? And I've needed you on more than one occasion,
Yep.
because it's like I I don't have time to figure out like all the ins and outs of fixing corruption errors on Windows. I probably
Yeah.
shouldn't, because like I have to fix corruption in SQL, but
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well,
it's
boot sectors are a little different than master tables.
yeah, a little bit.
Uh, Not
So
much, but a little bit.
but the other thing too, like that I've appreciated from you just over the years, is like how much you've stayed up to date on things like phones. Because
Mhm.
like I mean phones are so different from PCs and servers, and I just like I
Yep.
don't, I could learn it if I really wanted to, but I gotta learn this new SQL feature and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, John,
Yep.
help
Yep.
it.
What
And
phone should I get?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And that's something I enjoy to do, to keep up on stuff like that and try to review products here and there and I don't always succeed at getting the reviews posted anywhere. But a lot of companies I work with doing some consumer, mostly consumer based reviewing, I at least talk with them and let them know things that I found wrong or think should change. And so I've got a couple of products I'm still reviewing now that are kind of fun, and we'll talk about those a little bit later.
yeah, exactly. Well, with your small business folks, I'm kind of curious you know how you're seeing changes in both their needs and also what you have to offer. Because I mean, we all used to kind of have the server in the closet and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's such a different world now, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious how you see it more from like the small business market, since I work more in the
Mhm.
medium sized businesses.
Well, I think the biggest discussion points right now are on premises versus cloud.
Hmm.
There's a lot of salespeople saying you really got to move your stuff into the cloud, and that's all and good. But a lot of my small business clients are in locations that their internet connection isn't necessarily reliable and or fast. Um, QuickBooks, for instance, is one company that are into it, really is pushing their cloud solution. And you know, there's a client of mine just down the road from me who has Frontier DSL. That's the best they can get, and they max out at, I don't know, 6 megabits maybe. Um, and and they've got two people that are on QuickBooks pretty much full time in their office, and if they tried to go through their Frontier connection, be terrible. And so I every year we have this conversation, and it's getting shorter and shorter each time now. Should we move to the cloud? No, you're not ready yet. When Midco comes, maybe we can talk about it. And Midco hasn't been able to be there yet. So having the QuickBooks server on premises is the only way they can work right now. I've got some other clients that are in a better position though, and we are talking about the possibility of at least moving some of their stuff into the cloud. And one of them has a system that they've got about 5 or 6 people in the office that use it continuously every day, all day. And then they've got some people in the field that could use it that don't currently. And so one of the conversation is I'm having with the developer of their tool is, should we move the database into the cloud and leave the tool itself local, because then they could create a mobile version of the tool that runs on their phones out in the field.
Gotcha.
And I'm partly agreeable to it, but partly not, because they still, even though they do have fairly reliable internet, it isn't totally bulletproof yet. They do have Midco, which is pretty good, but every once in a while they go with a few hours to an afternoon even that their internet's down, and it's something to do with Midco. And it's just part of being more rural than in the city.
Yeah,
so
I was kind of thinking that to your point is like the exurbs and rural are kind of underserved as far as some of the like internet connectivity, and there's a few different options, like fiber phone cable, and then there's like mobile and satellite, but even then there's still a long ways to go. And for some of these providers, the money just isn't there to get the new shiny. And it's like,
well, and it's partly because of just the amount of potential clients that they would have. Part of the reason why the second customer I was talking about was able to get Midco is their part of the metro area started to actually grow. And initially they were one of, I don't know, 3 buildings on the block, and now there are probably 15 other buildings that have shown up. And so Midco's like, hey, this actually might be financially feasible for us. Let's do it. And the other one is mostly in a residential area, and they all have 10 to 20 acres or more. And so there's not a lot of building option. If Midco were to drop connections down their road, they might only get 5 people, 5 houses, because that's all there is. So it's hard. I totally understand why it's happening, but it's hard. So there's things that we have to figure out as a provider or a concierge in some manners. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned, because like, so my location, I'm not sure if this is the corporate headquarters or just a major location, but I mean, you're familiar with US Internet, right?
Yep.
I think you're the one who turned me on to them back in the day before.
Yep. I had an old roommate that used to work there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That might be what.
Patrick.
Oh, okay. And so they're like probably 3 to 4 blocks away from me, but and they have this wonderful fiber service. But I actually called them, and I was like, asking, hey,
please.
can you get yeah, can you get it?
Please,
we're only a few blocks, and like I don't know, there's actually a business that's like right on the other side of my fence that has the connectivity. But they're like, it costs like 20 plus grand after all the permits and everything is involved. So it's like, we would need like, all these people, like basically my whole neighborhood would need to sign up for it to be financially viable for them.
Right.
And like somewhere with even less density than, like I'm just in a fairly normal suburb here. Like that would be hard to justify financially. And so
right. And that actually brings up another point about being in the rural area too, is if the driveway happens to be more than a certain distance from the road, even if Midco is there, they will not drop a line to your house unless you are willing to pay like 30 grand. It's there's a farmhouse, old farmhouse that we were looking at as a possibility to move to not too long ago, and everything was turning out great until I called Midco and said, "This is where I am wondering if you service." And they said, "Yep, we actually have a CO post right outside, right on the road in the ditch next to the driveway." And then she's like, "Oh, do you know how long that driveway is?" And I said, "I don't know, it's probably 1,000 feet, give or take." And she's like, "Oh yeah, we can't do that." And I said, "Why not?" She says, "It's too far. The distance is too far from the road." And so one of the options was either build a climate controlled building right at the end of the driveway that they could then terminate to, and then I could just run my own or do a point to point wireless or something to the house. But that's not cheap to do. And then the other option was that they would do it if we paid $30,000 to dig the trench and run it all the way up to the house. And yeah, so that there's all kinds of little things that you wouldn't necessarily even think about, that happen in a more rural area.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. So how about PCs? Are they dead yet? I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but it's like,
yeah. So far in my experience, no. Consumer side more so than that than business side. Business side, most productivity still happens on PCs. Some servers are maybe going away because there are certain things that you can run in the cloud better than on a server. But again, you have to have reliable internet in order to do that. Mm-hmm. So most of my more rural clients, for sure, not losing any PCs or server purchasing. Yeah, I think it's just either easier to manage with a full keyboard and mouse for most things than it is on a tablet or a phone. I do have one client that's different than that. But he's an artist, and so he really uses his iPad with the pencil, Apple Pencil, and almost all of his work is done on his iPad Pro. He hardly ever touches his laptop, but he's also an outlier. Not everybody's an artist. So.
Right. And the lines is starting to blur on that kind of stuff too. Like, there's PCs that are tablet-like and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, like the one I have back here, the Surface.
Oh yeah,
Microsoft Surface. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I suppose you're the one who's always kind of seeing how far you can push it on the portability side, which I still use these big bricks that are basically, gaming laptops, and it's like,
yeah. I mean, there is something to that.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say that there are a lot of people that are getting a tablet still, or have had a tablet and are kind of fiddling around with it a little bit, and they end up using it as just a second screen device. But tablets have been around for a while now, and I think a lot of people do that and understand that concept.
Right.
So they'll answer their email and stuff on their tablet, but generally word processing and if they're doing procedural, like product management or product advertisements or data entry, but most of that is all done on PC still, as far as I see.
Well, speaking of Surface, I mean, you can kind of maybe get pretty close to a PC with the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
From what I hear, right?
Yeah, and it's getting closer. Yeah, I mean,
so
for sure.
Do you think, from a consumer perspective, there's any, like, aside from gaming and maybe like video editing, which is kind of more like power user kind of stuff,
right?
Is there a really compelling reason to still have a PC from a consumer's perspective? And
consumer wise, not as much. The prosumer probably would not give up their machines, and the gamers for sure. But grandma and grandpa down the road, or mom and dad, many of the things they want to do can be done on an iPad now. And iPads, while there are infection vectors into the iPad to break things and infect them with various things, it is a lot more rare. And so, something like that, or even a Chromebook or a Chrome base, where if you start seeing something goofy, restart it and it will verify itself and go, oh yeah, there's something wrong here, and restart from the second SSD partition there. The iPad, it doesn't quite do the same thing, but stuff like that really does help prevent infections and viruses that can do things bad. So
well, it's interesting that it's still kind of the case, because that used to be the big argument about using Mac, right? It was like,
yeah,
well, hardly any of the attack vectors are Mac. It's all PC. So
yep.
I'm more protected.
The iPhone has changed that a little bit.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point.
It's not a huge difference, but it definitely, people that buy an iPhone, Apple does a really good job in trying to convince and oftentimes succeeding, convincing people that, hey, if you get an iPhone, you really should get an iPad and or a MacBook, because they're all part of the same garden and they all work together. And so there are a lot more Macs out in the world, and even in the business world. Every once in a while I'll see a Mac where I wouldn't have expected it or would not have seen it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've got a MacBook here that I use primarily for most of my remote work. When I go out of the office, I'll bring my MacBook, partly because it gets 16 hours of battery life, which is phenomenal.
That is great. Yeah.
It's hard to find a Windows machine that'll do that. So
well, it's funny in the, like, let's say the medium-sized business where I'm, more tend to hang out. What I see a lot is like executives and or sales staff and marketing too, especially marketing with some of their kind of Mac-y tools, if you will.
Yeah,
but
Acrobat style. Yep.
Everybody's running PC except for like small handful, either in sales or in the C-suite, and it's like,
yep.
But for their IT, they still have to figure out how to run some of these tools, like like
oh yeah,
connecting to QuickBooks or using the funky Excel macros that they're doing, or stuff like that, and it presents extra fun challenges. Do you have to deal with any of that kind of stuff at all?
Most of the time, the Macs that I see are used mostly for like email and word processing. There are a couple maybe that use the iWork tools that the Excel macro may not work in the iWork version. And so, yeah, but then it's as simple usually as just getting Office 365 or Office 2019 for Mac installed on there. And yeah, so most of the time I don't see a whole lot of difference. There is a big enough difference in the user interface and how things work in the back end that a lot of people, when they first get a Mac, they're like, well, how do I connect to my file share? And Macs really are not as good at networking as Windows is. Even using it myself, I oftentimes get frustrated because I have an SMB connection to my file share running. I put the Mac to sleep and open it up, and there's a message saying you've been disconnected from the file share, and there's no reconnect button. It's just okay or dismiss. I'm like, what? Seriously? So yes, there are some little things, but most of the time, the users that decide that they want to use a Mac don't use tools that really need to be figured out like that.
Yeah.
So
Okay. That's fair. And I think, I'm thinking too, on the kind of on the corporate IT side, it seems like a lot of the solutions involve RDPing into a jump station just to run that one
yes,
software. It's like,
yep.
uh, oh,
Well,
GP.
the other thing that the M1 or M2 series MacBooks are really good with Parallels, which is
Hmm.
a Windows or a virtual machine setup, but most of the time Windows is what's running. Sometimes it's pretty rare you'll see a Mac running a Linux US or a Linux OS on there through Parallels, but it's most of the time Windows. And surprisingly,
Hmm.
um, the MacBook, I mean, I've got an M1, so it's not top of the line, but it often, even in the Windows emulation, which is not even running x86, uh, will oftentimes beat some of my Windows laptops
Wow.
in benchmarks and in tools like Handbrake, for instance, converting video files from one format to another.
Hmm.
Even in Windows, emulated Windows on a Mac, it's very similar to what it is on a non-emulated system. It's kind of crazy.
That is pretty bonkers,
So
especially when Intel and AMD have all the chance in the world to optimize on for
right.
that media stuff, and they've been doing. I mean, I remember like the first multimedia extensions, like MMX, right? And how
Yes.
long ago was that? And,
1997-ish or
right?
95. Yeah, probably 97. Yep.
Yeah,
SSE2. SSE and
yeah, yeah.
SSE2.
These codecs aren't a lot of these codecs aren't that new, So,
No, no. That's true.
well, I'm kind of curious about like, well, what are the ways that I see you among our friends is like you're the one always trying out the new toys, and
Yeah.
you know I might be more leaning more towards the Luddite side of things, which is kind of funny because I have to use technology every day, but
Yep.
you're always on the cutting edge, especially on consumer. What do you see
Well,
in consumer that's interesting or ground shaking, if you will?
yeah. So I guess, I married a woman who likes horses, so she gets to spend lots of money on horses, and so I get money to spend on toys sometimes. So that's kind of fun. But um yeah, so I've got my phone is a Galaxy Fold, so it folds into a tablet. Um and a lot of people when they see it for the first time are shocked and amazed. And for me, I'm older than 45 now. And so my eyes are getting a little bit to that stage where I might, even though I had LASIK years ago, I might have to get reading glasses. And so having the screen that opens up a little bit bigger is very helpful for me. And so that's one pretty much the main reason why I'm keeping this phone for now, just because it is nice to have that extra screen size.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so a couple of the other things I've got um, sent to me or recently purchased are augmented reality based. So there's this pair of glasses here called the Nreal Air, and right now these
Uh,
are the best ones that I like. Um, so they've got this little kind of protector that will dim your screen too. But if you look really close here, you can kind of see a second screen under here. So this screen is actually an LCD or an LED screen. And so
wow.
when you plug your USB-C connector um, into a USB-C device, so an Android phone generally, or even the MacBook M series M1 or M2s will allow it too. Windows as well, and it basically becomes a second monitor on your face. And um, one of my testing environments was at a ski resort. My wife and kids went skiing, and so I went and sat and hung out with some of the other students that were there, the homeschool group that we are involved with. And I plugged in the glasses, plugged it into my phone or my MacBook, dimmed the screen on the MacBook, and just had it mirror the current screen. And so I was typing away and doing some work, and these kids were walking around me and they're looking at my screen and they couldn't see anything at the screen. And then they were looking at my glasses. And because I had these off, I could still see through them. And so I could watch their faces as they're looking at me. It was really funny. They were just like in shock, like, what is that? And so then a couple of them, I actually pulled the glasses off and showed them, and they put them on. And they're like, whoa. And it's the same reaction that they'd get from putting on an Oculus or a VR system, but it's augmented reality, so it's a little different and very cool. And so I really like those. And then I've got another pair here called the Rokid Air, which are more futuristic looking, but I don't think the quality is quite as good. They look more like goofy glasses, but they still have the same. They still have the same kind of lens things here.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like what people thought the future would be in like the 80s futurist movies.
Yes. Or what's that band? Was it Daft Punk? It kind of makes me think of Daft Punk.
Right.
So, so those are, yeah. All around the world. Yeah. I think that's my most exciting thing, and then handheld gaming, because I'm still a gamer at heart, and from the old days. And so I get these so the Steam Deck is an x86 CPU based handheld that is a little bit bigger than a handheld. It's quite large, but if you notice, it does have a USB-C port, and the glasses will fit.
Oh,
and
cool.
So and it's smart enough to turn off the screen and shine it up onto the glasses, so you can actually sit anywhere, plug in your glasses, and you could, without like messing up your back with those types of glasses and a Steam Deck. And if you're not as into Steam, you can get something like this, which is a Android based handheld, and it's basically a miniature tablet with a control scheme attached to it that doesn't remove. Oh yeah, I mean, handheld gaming is more than the Switch now, and a lot of the opportunities, if you've got legitimate copies of old games from Nintendo, Sega Genesis, some of the really old stuff from the 80s and 90s, you can play them on these devices, and it's quite a kind of a reminiscing, and it's a lot of fun for us old guys.
It'd be fun to play the first Legend of Zelda wearing the glasses, and then
yes,
an Xbox controller or something like that. Just a big fat comfortable controller.
So I've got this series. This is a 8-bit do, and it's a brand new. They just came out maybe a month ago. It's, what is it called again? This is the ultimate Bluetooth controller, and then they also have an ultimate that's not Bluetooth and that just has a plug, but this also has a plug, so it's kind of doubly useful.
Yeah.
And its build quality is Xbox, but it's cheaper. It's like $40 or something, or $50 instead of 70 or 80 for an Xbox controller. And it has some programmable keys and stuff too, so it's a little more than an Xbox. So you get one of those and get your Steam Deck, and you can play Steam games, you can play emulation, and a lot of fun.
I really like that tech, but at the same time, and this is the Luddite in me, right? It's like, well, with I forgot what trials they're doing now with Musk's plug-in brain tech.
Oh yeah. Yep. That Neuralink.
And they got
with the pig
augmented reality, and funny enough, if you like to get all paranoid and Luddite, like they're talking about using the human battery on devices now. That's the next step. It's like, tell me how that isn't the Matrix.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I
You
mean?
know, Elon Musk is well versed in knowing, has said many times that he thinks we're living in a simulation,
A
and
simulation.
so to him, it is the Matrix. So it's a Matrix inside a Matrix, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so you bring up battery life, and that's something that, you know, a smartwatch, for instance, is something that a lot of people are familiar with now. They've been
Yeah,
around
yeah.
for a few years. But the biggest problem with a smartwatch is battery.
Mm.
And so this one happens to be a Garmin that gets about 20 days of battery life.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Whereas, you know, an Apple Watch would get you 2, maybe. Samsung Watch would maybe get you 3. So there are some exciting wearables coming as well. And in fact, the sound that I've got now is, I'm using these are aftershocks, and they're bone conducting, but they're, you know, very minimal. You can see them if I turn to the side, but right on, you don't really see them.
Right, right.
And they're open ear, so they'll let me hear the world around me as well. So like walking down the road, uh cars, you can still hear the cars coming. You know, and granted, we're IT nerds that don't always get out and exercise, but when we do and should, you can do it mostly safely. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that is really slick, and that's the part of me that isn't a lot of it. It's like so many of the stuff is really great. It has awesome use cases, but at the same time, like I was kind of tempted to to work on get more sleep data for myself.
mm-hmm.
There's this pretty fancy ring based one.
Yep. Aura.
Yeah, 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 Aura. Yep.
Yep.
And but at the same time, it's like you know. Um, IoT and wearables and stuff like that are notorious for not having good security. And it's like,
Oh.
what what wouldn't people be willing to open up to anybody who wants
Mm-hmm.
to get that data well enough? It's like, I mean, your very personal medical info. It's like,
Yep.
your pulse rate, and I mean, to me, like, especially when from us. I mean, you hear all the time what happens when corporations get
Mm-hmm.
compromised, right? And who doesn't want to target like I mean, like software as a service type places, you know, some of them don't have a strong security because they
Mm-hmm.
kind of start out on the cloud and kind of get
Yep.
that prototype out there, and then they have all this sensitive data, and they're very juicy targets for people who want to get lots of um, whether it's consumer or business data. And
Yep.
so part of me is really torn on this because it's like, especially with our kids who, sharing everything is pretty ubiquitous. It's like without giving them that education, they just assume, that it's fine to just give all data to everybody, right? And so
Right.
so I guess you know from your perspective, especially since you deal out more with consumer and much smaller small business. Like, what are your thoughts on, is there a limit to what very personal information you may or may not give companies if they're delivering value, right? Because if they
Right.
weren't delivering
Yeah.
value, it wouldn't even be a question, right? I mean, it'd just be like, what
Yep.
the heck?
Yep.
But yeah, it's like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the thing that always comes back to me is that mantra: if you're not paying for it, you are the product.
Yep, exactly.
And so that's something that I think needs to be remembered and taught better, because yeah, like you said, most of our kids growing up here don't even think a third thought about it, or even a second thought, saying, oh yeah, we could send that off and who cares. My friends do it, so who, whatever. um, and I think right now the only potential silver lining that maybe shows that it isn't as big of a deal for some people is that the likelihood of you being the target is so small unless you're a well-known person. Um, but at some point in the very near future, quantum computing might become a real big thing. And then at that point, it doesn't matter if you're the target because they've got enough computing power and enough storage and everything to do whatever they want and figure out exactly who you are and track you through everything.
Right.
And so that you kind of got to walk a fine line and decide. You got to make your own choice and say, Garmin collects my sleep data and my heart rate and everything. They claim that they keep it private and whatever, and as long as they don't get broken into in some manner, you're probably fine. But if you don't think that they're going to be a good company, following best practices, or they might have a mistake and get broken into, and your data is now gone. So there are a few people I know, a couple of clients that are very leery about moving anything into the cloud because they just don't trust it. And I guess it was a while for me to decide that I'm okay with certain things. And it was just because I figured, well, nobody's going to want to go after me because I'm just little old John. But that was also before quantum computing started to kind of, there are, what is it, 32 bits now they're able to do.
Are they call them qubits or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. So that once they get up to 1024 or something, then it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too about like small versus large companies is that the what do you want to call it, the asymmetry is so big nowadays. Although what's interesting, AI and lots of data has been a form of asymmetry, but with all of the capability of AI as a service, basically.
Mm-hmm.
In
like ChatGPT.
Yeah, I was wanting to that too, actually, but
yeah.
but even on like some more, everything used to be about coding, right? Even for machine learning, and granted, there's still a lot of things that are very coding centric that you need to do, but they talk about like citizen programmers or citizen coders and citizen this or that.
Developers. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're pretty much there. So even machine learning, isn't totally, only available to the true tech wizards. So I'm kind of torn on that because it's turning data on its head, for better for worse, right? I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yep.
But I'm also kind of thinking too that for the AI asymmetry, like large corporations can vacuum up all the data and process it in real time, and have 100 AI developers, and the information available to them is just like not even comparable. But now that's with these cloud services, it's like starting to even out a bit. I'm not saying that
I can see that.
The small to medium is ever gonna catch up to like Google or something, but
yeah.
but I think quantum computing is like the next true asymmetry. And while I think there might be a argument for getting that into the cloud too, like if you want to rent a couple hours on quantum computers, but at the same time, like governments and or large corporations that have access to it, basically encryption is meaningless, right? And so it obviously it depends on the good actor, bad actor, but that's an interesting point. It's like it's almost hard to think about a post encryption world. You know what I mean? Like there's this dance on encryption algorithms, and whether it is government or corporations for like corporate espionage or whatever. But Yeah, what do you think about that? 'Cause, like, kind of what quantum computing might bring
Uh,
as far as post
yeah.
encryption. You know what I mean?
Well, so I listen to a lot of security podcasts that um, mostly just to kind of keep up on what's going on and
Yeah,
hopefully help my clients with. Well, for instance, a couple of days ago, I found out that there's a huge WordPress vulnerability going on with a bunch of different plugins, and WooCommerce was one of them. And one of my clients uses WooCommerce as their primary storefront, and a third to two-thirds of his business in any given day goes through the website. He does have a storefront as well, but it's a pretty big deal. And so I immediately the next morning went on and updated his plugins and sent him a message and said, "This is what I found." Um, but in kind of keeping up on those, I'm hearing little bits about quantum computing and the potential for it. And yeah, it basically is theoretically going to make encryption obsolete.
yep,
Um, and at that point, I mean, if you're a government actor, especially, or a big wallet, basically can spend as much as you want on whatever you want to do. Uh, you pretty much are going to have access to anything and everything.
right.
Um,
Okay.
and I don't know what to think about that. The only potential is if there's some laws that get written to try to step in before it happens, but
Mm-hmm.
humanity is well known for not being able to do that, or not wanting to do that in some manners. So yeah, I don't know. That's one thing that I try not to think a lot about because I don't know that there's a good answer.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly. And that might be the point. I think I remember some uh, uninspectable communication protocols where the inspecting kills the protocol. And I can't remember if that
yep.
was also quantum. So there may be like an un um, like a physical encryption or like maybe a quantum based
Yeah. Well,
encryption.
and that brings up another point that some of the people that talk about oil, for instance, um, 200 years ago, oil was no, we didn't know what to do with it. It was just this thing that would come out of the ground, and we didn't know that it was a fuel source. Somebody realized, oh, I wonder what this is good for. So yeah, there might be something that's coming down the line that can defeat quantum computing that we just don't know about. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but the idea of like, what is it, Schrodinger's cat or something, that when the idea of seeing it changes it just because you saw it, and so maybe there's going to be some form of anti-quantum encryption that does that corrupts
Yeah,
it the minute you try to break it, or yeah,
I'll have
you should
to.
patent that.
Well, somebody was already working on this
Oh, okay.
concept of you know computing that I don't remember if it was light based or you know these kind of quantum subparticles or what. But that was like 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Which time seems to fly fast. So who knows where that's at? But
That's true.
yeah, I
Yeah.
guess maybe let's just talk about tech rescue today a little bit and like
Sure.
what what is your sweet spot? What do you get? What do you do for a small business and consumer right now that really
Mm-hmm.
is something that people are really looking for?
Um, I'm I'm a generalist enough that I can help with just about anything, and I have enough contacts in the industry that if I don't understand something fully, or don't know it well enough to be considered an expert enough to implement it myself, um, I generally have an access to a bunch of people that can help. And so a lot of times, some of my projects that I've done in the last couple of years have really expanded beyond what I had normally done in the past. and I did have to bring in some extra people for help, and but it ended up being successful just fine, and under budget and everything. So, I still try to treat every customer as someone that doesn't have unlimited piggy bank,
Right.
and try to keep costs down as much as I can, um, and just one of the reasons that I started Tech Rescue after, or started doing it full time, was that there was, the other well-known company I've already mentioned. Many of their sales and support people really have no people skills, and we're terrible at customer service and trying to sell you things you don't need. And I just don't like that. And so that's, one thing that I really put a lot of effort into, not um, overselling things, and trying to provide everything I can
Yeah.
to be a good value.
Well, a little bit about that that service with that you've done, especially for families who want to be
Yeah.
internet connected, but
Yep.
kind of protect their kids a bit from all the
Yeah.
bad.
So I was going to go into that a little bit. A couple of years ago, I started kind of fiddling around with Raspberry Pis again.
Mhm.
And one of the tools that was designed for a Raspberry Pi is called PiHole. And PiHole is a DNS based blocking tool. Um, and probably many of your viewers already know about it.
Mhm.
But if you don't, it runs on very minimal hardware. You can put it in the cloud if you want, and have your router connected to it as its DNS server. And anytime you go to a blocked domain of any kind, not it'll just show up an NX domain prompt, and that includes like ad lists, so advertising. A lot of advertising, not all of it, but a lot of it is blocked. Um, and you can manually add your own lists too. So I've created a couple of family friendly ones that block different types of porn, and different types of like cutting and hurting, and research on bombs and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and just that kind of lists are, community run lists, so there's going to be things that get by it or are mislabeled in some ways, but generally I've had pretty good experience with it. And so, because we're part of a homeschool group too, we've um, talked about it with some of the other moms that are in the group, and some of the other dads, and they're all really interested in it. So I'm going to end up doing a presentation for our homeschool group at some point in the near future about it. And it's as simple as setting up a little Raspberry Pi that costs $100 or less, and putting it on your network and using that as your DNS server. Or we do offer a monthly, I think it's $3 a month for a per device, maybe. For some of, I've got two or three that are out in the cloud that are running, that you can use. And my church, we have my church set up on it, and they love it. Kids that were dinking around in church are finding that they can't get everywhere that they used to be able to. And I have another client that's a school down in St. Paul, and I set it up on premises for them because they wanted to have more control.
Right.
They wanted to be able to block Facebook and whatnot. And if I were to put that on the cloud ones, then anybody using it would not be able to get to Facebook, and so that wouldn't necessarily be a good thing.
Yeah.
But I helped them set it up, and it can run on an old piece of hardware too. It doesn't have to be a Raspberry Pi.
Mhm.
Anything that can run Linux, it can run on. And so yeah, I've kind of repurposed it to be more than what it was initially designed for. And I don't know, it gives me a peace of mind for my own children, because they're getting to that age where they're wanting to get on their tablets and get on the internet and do searches for different things to buy, and stuff like that. And just having that there to help, gives another layer they always say layered protection is the best, and so this is another layer of protection that we have. So,
Great. Well, yeah, and I think that's really great because I think that's a good service because there's lots of people who just don't know any better, and
mhm.
for somebody like you, it's not that big of a deal to figure it out and whatnot, and but at the same time, there's still plenty of people out there who, I mean, it's kind of like me. I just don't have the time to figure out some of the general stuff because
Yep.
I'm trying to keep up on, now I'm working on like Azure certs, and that's the next thing I have to
Yep.
figure out, Azure Data Factory, right? And so it's like, for me, PiHole sounds like a really awesome idea that'll get to any data,
Yep.
so
You'll
so
get
it's
there
like
tomorrow.
having somebody with a service. It's like, well, yeah, that's great. I mean, and
Yeah.
$3 a month is just like, I mean, that's half a coffee.
Right. Right. And again,
Oh,
you
mhm.
can I can do a concierge style where I can either provide it, or I can show you how to do it, or I can do it for you on premises on your own in your own network, or whatever. Um, so yeah, and almost all of my business clients, small businesses, are using it, um, partly because it helps block ads and just junk from getting into their machines, but I also have it running through known infection vectors too, that it blocks those. So if you get a spam mail or a phishing email that has a link that it knows about, or one of those lists already knows about, you click on it, it's going to not do anything. Um,
Oh,
and so I don't
pretty
even,
nice.
I could have, yeah, I could be saving thousands of dollars and not even know it, that they've not been infected with things. Which actually brings up another thing. If I had one piece of advice, it would be backups. um,
Right.
yeah, so that backups and backups and backups. I usually do 3-tier backups. I've got a server, and then I have a network drive or something on the network that the server backs up to, and then I also have a cloud-based, Carbonite or uh, Backblaze or Crash Plan, that kind of thing. And then the server will also generally have a RAID system or something, so that the drive backups and whatnot. So that's what I suggest. That's what most of my business clients do now. I've had a few that have learned the hard way.
Yeah,
that
yeah. Don't be like Eric. I had a few close calls, and you helped me through a couple of them, but ultimately they weren't like mission critical data, but it was one of those things where, on an old laptop, I had some more archived data that I didn't use a lot, but I almost just plain lost it, lost company records,
Mhm.
because I hadn't been backing it up, and so I'm, kind of back to doing that, and I got a couple of layers of protection now, but yeah, it's so easy to forget, but I mean,
Yep.
if I if
And
I lost it all right now, it's just,
yep.
oh god,
And the other
what's
thing too
wrong?
is, don't get tricked into using a backup solution that's too expensive too. We have a mutual acquaintance that was paying like $300 a month for his backups, wasn't it? It was nuts. It was like, what the heck?
Mhm.
So we got him down to, I think, $10 a month, and it's just as reliable and works just as
Let's
well.
talk about yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, well, um, we are kind of hitting the 4:20 mark for me grabbing kids. So,
Sure.
uh, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah. So techrescue.mn for Minnesota. It's got my phone number. Let's see, what is it? 651-447 TECH is my answering service phone. So I don't generally answer that phone, but I do get the messages as soon as they're left. So yeah, info@techrescue.mn if you want to ask questions via email.
Well,
So
cool. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, I can say personally that, not only have you been a really great friend, but you've also been a really great resource when, I've gotten stuck on some
you're
consumer
gonna make me
electronic issues.
cry.
Well, no,
Thank
I
you.
mean it.
No, I know.
And so yeah, if any of you, even if you're like just tech specialists that don't have the time to get to
Yep.
some kind of home office issues, John is a really great guy. And but yeah, thanks so much
Thanks.
for being on the podcast. It's been a
Yeah,
fun
sorry I got
fun
sick last time
conversation.
5 weeks ago when we were going to do this the first time, and I got
Yeah, you
laryngitis.
lost your voice. I mean,
Laryngitis lasted 5 weeks. It was nuts. So anyway, back to normal.
well, yeah, and I'm glad you're up and running again.
Yep.
Thanks for being on here, and thanks everybody for watching. It's been fun, and this has been Covering Data podcast number 7. Thanks everybody, and have a great day. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening to the Covering Data podcast. If you'd like to learn more about how I can help you with your database needs, check out my website at coveringdata.com or email me at eric@coveringdata.com. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks.